I apologize for the background noise on our You're gonna hear a bit of fluff in this recording. It's 5 degrees outside right now, and I gotta keep my fuzzy ball sack running, otherwise I'm just gonna melt. I made a video covering team recognition in Fortress 2.
Recently, I stumbled upon a... Okay, I'm not starting the video like that. Hi, my name is MixerXW, and firstly I'd like to kick off this video with a little preamble. So, to those who read my last community post, this video does not qualify as a higher quality or of more substance video as I promised in that post. In my eyes, at least. And what I mean by this is that this video is mostly just me dissecting and critiquing a r/TF2 Reddit post and its comments section. Which, in my personal opinion, which should be taken as gospel, is just not the most highbrow content. No shade to Strawman though. But do not click off the video just yet, because I do believe that I make some genuinely good points in this video, and that I present and explain certain issues that not that many figures talk about inside the TF2 community, from a pretty refreshing and, dare I say, unusual angle. Also, to those still disappointed, I am currently working on a much bigger as well as higher quality TF2 video project with another very talented small TF2ber. And let me just tell you that you most certainly could consider this video as a little sneak peek, a little preamble of sorts to what is to come in the up and coming future. More on that at the end of the video. So do not fret, my dear sweet viewer, more actually good TF2 videos are in the works as we speak. And with all that out of the way, let's get to the video. And thank you for watching. Recently, I stumbled upon a post recommended to me by Reddit itself, which I would like you to know that I don't use Reddit, and the only reason as to how I even got that recommendation is because I have an account, and so I get the daily mail of any new r/TF2 posts. And I always just delete those mails, but this one time, this post right here caught my attention in a way that you might already suspect by knowing the premise of this video. And now, depending on who you are, you might be avid to say that it's just a well-meaning, overly enthusiastic, and a genuinely honest Sonic and TF2 fan that just so happened to come across this item's workshop page and just really wanted to share it with everyone. And I want to believe this. I really do. But after looking at the post with a bit more of a keen eye, paints a different picture. And as some of the comments have pointed out, the person who made that post is a fresh account, is praising the cosmetic like it's the second coming of the Heavy update, literally calling it the greatest cosmetic in the entire game, which, A, unorthodox display of hubris, but very well, and B, this obscure little known TF2 fact that it's not in the game, and not to mention that the author even included the link to this item's workshop page in the post itself so that people could upvote it. And also, lastly, the author wrote their post as if it's a pop-up ad for a skincare product. I know, minor nitpick, but just pause the video for a moment and read it out loud for yourself. Jeez. Alright, so what is my personal actual issue with the item submission? Well, to understand as to why it is, in my opinion, inappropriate for Team Fortress 2, we must first have in place some reasonable standard as to what an appropriate TF2 cosmetic looks like. And to do that, I needed to get a little creative, let's call it. So allow me to briefly take you back in time, down the memory lane, back to Team Fortress 2's launch date in October of 2007, which had no cosmetics back then. In 2009, at the end of the 9-day-old campaign of the Sniper vs. Spy update, TF2 has been graced with the revolutionary materialization of a concept known as cosmetical items, which, for context, as a concept itself have been invented only a mere 5 years prior in 2004 by Blizzard for World of Warcraft. These original 9 Valve-made hats, one for each of our 9 mercenaries, were pretty experimental, to say. Valve were very much testing the waters with how they wanted to characterize our, even by then, beloved mercs, and you can clearly tell that they definitely had the intentions to flesh out our mercenaries beyond just gameplay via Meet the Team shorts, comics, and within the very same update as the first ever TF2 comic, cosmetics. As we skip a little in the timeline and take a closer look at the hats that were added after that initial dipping of the toes that the first 9 hats very much were, we can clearly see that Valve really wanted to characterize the mercenaries by implementing in-game character cosmetics. And I'd like for you to step into my shoes for a moment and see this from the same perspective that I'm looking at this from. That at the time, all of the mercs' nationalities, interests, names, and deeper character traits as a whole weren't known or developed to the same extent that they are today. And I believe that one of the best examples of what I'm talking about would have to be the hats that were added in the very next major update, the classless update. All of the hats added in that update not only look neat, adhere to the game's strongly established themes, tone, and art direction, but at the same time, they were groundbreaking additions to this multiplayer game, which actually enhanced the player experience by allowing for a deeper expression of not only the mercs characters, but the players themselves, as well as individual player differentiation, which you cannot deny was a huge driving force in building communities and encouraging player interactions, because it was no longer just another stock engineer that you had a bone to pick with. Now it was this NG player wearing a Texas 10 gallon that you, the Bonehelm Scout, have a heated rivalry with. It was a match made in heaven. After that classless update, we had the first ever Halloween update, the Haunted Halloween special of 2009, which no, it wasn't called Scream Fortress just yet. That would come next year. And the hats added in the Halloween special were ridiculous by the standards of back then, but they meshed perfectly with the tone and theme that Valve was going for with that Halloween update. A shitty all-class drawn-on paper bag mask and a all-class decrepit top hat with some mild lore imprecations. They were always meant to be mere cherry-picked novelties on top of this exception-flavored cake. Alright, this would take way too long to get to my point if I went update by update, and my next video is going to be literally all about this stuff. So excuse me as I quickly skip through only the more noteworthy updates from this point moving forward, okay? Great, let's continue. The Sam and Max promo collaboration of April 15, 2010 that added the first ever promotional items into the game, which included the now iconic and very odd at the time Max's severed head, which the TF2 wiki classifies as Valve made, but the blog that introduced it clearly states that it was contributed by Telltale Games, so I wasted precious hours trying to figure out what even classifies as a Valve-made item, which was way too big of a rabbit hole for this video to explore. Pun intended, I really need you to know this. Next! Sorry for that. The first community-contributed update content pack, as the name would suggest, added the first ever community-made items into Team Fortress 2, most notably of which the Community Sparkle Unusual effect, that predates the official first unusual circling peace sign Stout Shaco by almost 8 months, as well as 9 community-made hats, which most of them were really solid additions into the game. Next up, the Manconomy update of September 30th, 2010, which, to make it really brief, added a bunch of odd community contributed as well as some Valve made hats for all of the classes, except the engineer for some reason, added the frying pan, and the now legendary Series 1 unusual effects. After that, we got our first ever Scream Fortress event, which continued the trend of the soulful Halloween costume premise from the year prior, for the most part. And in December of that year, we received the Australian Christmas update, which is noteworthy for gracing us with a whole lot of mostly non-themed community-created very good hats, except for you, as well as the iconic Valve-made World Traveler's hat. Anyway, nothing really big happened in terms of hats or cosmetics for some time. Until 2012. Then something changed. Throughout the 2012, there was a noticeable shift in how Valve approached TF2, and subsequently its cosmetic items. Valve appeared really eager on making the story and gameplay of TF2 more interesting and engaging to all of its fans, but somewhere along the way Valve got a bit lost in the metaphorical sauce, started making shit up at a rate like never seen before, or ever after, and the overall diligence to maintaining the cosmetics' cohesiveness and tonal appropriateness got lost somewhere along the way, with cosmetics added after 2011 taking a noticeable decrease in the care that was put into their theme, tone, and stylization. Not to say that there aren't any good cosmetics that were added after 2011, that is not what I'm serving here. And we did have a fair share of stinkers prior to that, but it is undeniable that Valve was very much taking increasingly bolder swings at the game's tone and themes starting in 2012 and continuing up to this very day. And so, as a little conclusion, I want you to know that it is my strong opinion that the period from 2007 to 2011 marks the most artistically consistent period in TF2's lifespan and should be taken as the golden standard for any TF2 workshop contribution. So now the Crustache isn't the most egregious thing I ever saw. But it's also not very good. Which, from what I've seen, not that many people see anything wrong with it. Or if they do, many don't say why exactly it isn't appropriate for the game. So let's break it down based off of what we already know. The Crustache is overtly meant to be a Dr. Ivory Robotnik reference, and with the exception of one guy, everyone got it.
Snooping as usual, I see. Well, you're already too late, as my evil master plan is already in effect.
Suffice to say, it is an obnoxious Eggman reference. But does that make it automatically bad? Well, I sure hope not, because some of the most iconic hats in the game are pretty blatant references to external media, and I don't want to engage in any sort of double standard in here. And to focus on the silver lining for just a little longer, the mustache itself would make for a great loadout filler when making a Halloween crazy evil scientist cosmetic set for medic or engineer. But that's where my praise for this potential item ends, and my critique begins. Starting with the fact that with the exception of the already aforementioned medic and Engie, this cosmetic is also intended to be worn by soldier, pyro, demo, heavy, and sniper, which looks extremely jarring and is completely inappropriate for these characters to be wearing. And then we have the nose. Why did the author feel compelled to make that the default option and not just the mustache? I wish I knew. And I get that Eggman has a giant pointy red proboscis of a nose, and that it is an iconic aspect of Robotnik, and that it also allows for a Engie Wario loadout when you're feeling extra creative, but messing with the mercenary's facial structure is a huge no-no, and looks very strange in TF2 every single time it is being messed with. To sum it all up, the reason as to why the Crustache specifically shouldn't be officially added into the game is because, in its current state, it is an obnoxious reference to external media, one of its styles changes the merc's facial anatomy, and it can be equipped by classes on which it is inappropriate to be on. Alright, now that we are done with the meat of the video, and we are all on the same page when it comes to what makes for a good TF2 cosmetic, and why the Crustache shouldn't be officially added, let's move on to the potatoes of this video. That being, me examining, aka nerding out over, the common argumentation and rhetoric for and against the addition of workshop contributions, by conveniently using up the rest of the comments under this Reddit post as the primary majority of the examples. You transition, yes, not like right now. Hold on, let me just put my glasses on first. By the way, they're not actual glasses, they're just blue lights, but they make me feel smarter. Alright class, so in today's presentation we will be talking about what logical fallacies are, show some real life examples of them, and also, don't worry, I'll try to be brief with each of them. I will present only the relevant ones, and if need be, you can always pause to read the details on your own time. So, what's a fallacy to begin with?
Psychology, sociology, middle degree, Mr. Sugar, intellectual talk, PhD, master debater.
Come closer. What is the sound of one hand clapping?
I don't know. What is the sound of one? Oh!
Alright, then let's continue. A logical fallacy can be best defined as the use of invalid or otherwise faulty reasoning in the construction of an argument. Got that? Understood that? Great. So, firstly, the good old ad hominem fallacy. It occurs when instead of addressing somebody's argument, you attack that person instead, whether that be their actions or their traits, usually devolving into just calling each other names and labels. The red herring fallacy, another classic. A red herring is when you answer your opponent's argument, but instead of addressing the point or points made in that argument, whether intentionally or not, you distract away from the current discussion onto a new one, usually somewhat related or adjacent topic, changing the subject of the discussion. The Strawman fallacy, my personal favorite if you couldn't tell. The entire idea of a strawman is pretty self-explanatory. It's when you build up a mischaracterized, easy to attack and dismantle assumption of what your opponent's argument is, pose it as if it's something your opponent has actually committed, and then you attack it and dismantle it. In essence, it's making shit up. The cherry picking and consequently the nut picking fallacy. Cherry picking occurs when instead of using all of the information you obtained to form your opinion on something or to build up your narrative off of, you simply ignore the majority of the data that does not align with your opinion or narrative. And oppositely, nut picking happens when you intentionally go out of your way to seek out and only focus on the most extreme, non-representative actions that the member of the opponent's side have committed, which nicely segues us into the hasty generalization fallacy. Another pretty self-explanatory one. You see a guy say things that you personally don't agree with, who's a member of a group who holds the wrong opinions, and he is being a massive douche about it? Accuse your entire opposition of being made up of mostly, or better yet, only people like that one individual and smear their credibility for good. Case closed. The appeal to force fallacy, and more specifically relating to the screenshot present, the coercion fallacy, which is when you try to convince your opponent that the stance that they hold is unreasonable because nobody is forcing or threatening them into holding that stance. And lastly, for today's presentation, the fallacy of relative privation, which is when you dismiss your opponent's argument on the basis that the problem being presented by them is not as important as some of the other more important issues that should be prioritized instead of the one being argued. So, yeah. I'd like to briefly clarify that I use these screenshots as examples not because I genuinely believe that all or that even most people behave like this, but to show that people like this do exist and that they are a tangible issue within our community. And the very reason as to why I wanted to make this video is to expose that behavior and to remind people like you and me on how to differentiate the wheat from the chaff, how to spot a poorly constructed rhetoric, and most importantly to me, how to properly approach such poisoned arguments. And the answer to that is calmly, respectfully, knowing your own boundaries, and with the ability to spot logical fallacies in your opponent's argumentation, but more importantly, in your own. And not to get too corny in here, and yes, I know, something, rule 11, nobody actually debates on the internet, it's only for attention, and that any internet discourse will inevitably become a hot, stinky doo-doo dumpster fire. But despite all that, I still at least want you to remember that the core principle, the very idea of any debate, first and foremost, is to challenge the perspective of all of its participants as well as any willing viewers, and that the winners of a debate are not the ones who didn't change or didn't feel like they were challenged in any way, but the ones who learned something from it and left a better man or woman. You get the point. Make sure to comment, like, and let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, and make sure to share the video around while you're at it. I'm really hoping to hit that magical 5 subscriber count by the end of the year, and I will really appreciate if you took just a moment to support me this way. Thank you for watching, and till next time. I'm not really sure on how to end this video, to be honest. No epic end credit edit this time around, so sorry for that. But yeah, the future videos. At the moment, I'm working with one Luizo, link to his channel in the description, on a video about TF2's art design, and I won't spoil too much here, but it's about how much of an integral part the game's art style, design, direction, and identity play into what we know as Team Fortress 2 to begin with. So yeah, shout out to Luizo, good luck on your UFR TF2 YouTube video contest video, and thank you so much for watching this video to its very end, and peace out.
Anyway, if y'all excuse me, I'm gonna go back to rock climbing and swimming in bitches now.